What we start to ask ourselves as teachers is, what is the effect that we are having on that child and their future outcomes?
Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
All right, kia ora everyone. Today I am talking about some of my thoughts that I had yesterday. It occurred to me when reading a book called Drucker and Me, which is about the famous management consultant Peter Drucker. He pointed out around ministers or church ministers being entrepreneurs. And what it got me thinking about was teachers as being an entrepreneur. So this podcast is really being pushed out to all my teaching whānau in all walks. I really want to talk to the fact that teachers actually are embedded in the grounds of becoming entrepreneurs. The first one around being an entrepreneur is that you've got to continually innovate. Now, there's only so many ways that you can teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. When I started in my career, I had 32 5-year-olds-ish. I had to teach them swimming. That was really tough, but there was only so many ways you could really keep children captured when teaching those basics and trying to help them progress in their academic pursuits. So when you're a teacher, you've got to continually innovate. And that means that you've got to strive really hard to make sure that the learning's landing in so many different ways. It means using different resources. It means using different voices and different styles, finding different books. It means you might have to go out and find different cultural books. It means you might have to learn it in another language, like I had in Afrikaans or something, and then try and get it back into those phases of them understanding and for the message to land. But ultimately, you really have to be innovative to make sure that your product or your teaching lands. The second thing is that was really interesting to me, and what really inspired up some great memories in my own career, was how dynamic the room is all the time. And now in that dynamic space, you have the greatest intentions about building something that really is going to excite children. You go in the weekend, you spend some time. I used to go in every Sunday, really. That was my day of just going in and really sitting down in my own space and thinking, right, what does this child need? What does this child need? What does this group need? And your program came in and was very, very dynamic. And you built out experiences that you yourself as an educator got excited about, and then when the product landed or the experience landed, and you saw their excitement in their face, it really hyped you up to tell you that you're in the right direction and moving the right way. But then at those points, you also realise that actually it's not working for this group over here or this group of boys over here. It's just not landing. You had to be dynamic and quickly move and pivot. Now, pivoting is a major entrepreneurial piece or strength. Every entrepreneur has the ability to pivot and pivot fast. When they recognise that things are not working, they cut their losses, bang, and then they quickly pivot and move in a different direction in the hope of it landing in that space. Now, if I take a typical session that I used to run when I was in a primary school space, and especially in those 5-year-old settings, and you had a typical day being built on reading and writing programs in the morning, maths after morning tea, and then you might do some sort of science or some other curriculum area, and then you had your lunch, and then after lunch was some sustained silent reading, and then a big book that you shared and all those sorts of things. You had a structure, but the key elements when coming in and working with children about their learning had to be very dynamic. And I think going from working with 5-year-olds to my time going in and working in Monday to Intermediate, when I was working in an intermediate space, you had to realise that a lot of children had been turned off by school already. They were 10 to 13 or 11 to 13. They'd actually had quite a bad experience at school. It was rammed down their throat that they weren't doing very well in school, which is hard for anyone to take, let alone a 9, 10-year-old. So I made it my mission to make sure that the program was very dynamic, and generally I had great or higher probability of success. Talking further to failure. Now, I'd love to say that everything I planned and mapped out was a raging success, but I probably remember my failures more than I remember my successes. One certainly particular thing is an art thing that I just did not get well at, don't do well in Rewa. It was meant to be an art week and we were meant to create all this stuff, and I just didn't take to it. My enthusiasm was very low, and what we created in the end was just horrid. And actually the children's attitudes reflected in my attitudes towards it, and actually we didn't do very well and we really let ourselves down in that space. But we took the failure as a classroom, we looked at it and we said, right, where were we lacking? The first thing I could own was my enthusiasm towards it was not great. Then the kids were able to say, yep, we probably fed off you as well, Mr. E, but we could have done A, B, C, D. So we took the failure, we wrapped it up, we took out all the things, all the learnings that we got through it, and then in that space we were able to then apply it. And when we had science week and things like that, we actually carried those learnings into the next experience, and it really, really guided us. I think a major part of teachers as entrepreneurs is our ability to inspire the individual for a group outcome. That's a major part of being an entrepreneur. You have to be able to pull people along in the vision and the dream. And I got lots of practice because you've got to convince every child at an individual level that what we are doing in this program actually is going to help them in their group function. We have to show them that what we are doing, learning, teaching is absolutely applicable at an individual's level and at the level of their peer group, and ultimately their impact on their local community and hopefully and generally society in general. So our ability to really inspire those children at an individual level is very unique to teachers. I find that the greatest teachers are the ones that the child goes home and says to their parents, nah, Mr. E said this, or Mr. J said this, or something like that. Like, it's in those realms where you start to see that ability to really invoke the individual and how they get through as part of a group collective. Finally, as an entrepreneur, I think is vision. Now, teachers, I go in and I see, I'm so privileged in my position, I get to go in and see the vision of what teachers are trying to execute in their spaces. You go into a baby space and you see what they've got set out, what they're thinking through the individual child. They're thinking through what that will look like when they come in and what they're doing and interacting with. They know and recognise, little Ray, he's at the moment he's coming in, he's unsettled, but he loves Play-Doh. Or we've got little Frankie and she struggles with letting go of dad in the morning, so we're going to set up something that's really interesting to her around dinosaurs and things. And we see teachers, they think through that in that space, and that vision grows further, because what we start to ask ourselves as teachers is, what is the effect that we are having on that child and their future outcomes? Everything is about stacking. But we often think end goal in mind. And I find a lot of teachers, they are experts at it. They start thinking, right, this is what I see for X child. This is what I want to see for them in terms of achievement, in terms of happiness, in terms of social competencies, in terms of emotional abilities and regulation. And then I'm going to go and work back and start to stack into those phases. And it's absolutely a privilege of mine in this role to go out and observe that all the time. I love teaching. I love what teaching taught me. I love every day going in and seeing what people are doing in those spaces. To my fellow teachers, and I know plenty of teachers out there that are still in the game. I applaud you for what you do. I applaud you for your everyday commitment to being an entrepreneur within your classroom, being innovative, being dynamic, to invoke the individual to be really inspired so that their commitment to their own learning has a major contribution to the group and societal settings. And I thank you for the vision that you hold for these children every single day. Up the wise.